Hi there, I'm Sebastian Mellon, the founder and CEO of Assemble, and I'm here today to bring you the hashtag Salty Masks initiative. It may sound a bit silly, but it also may save some lives. Let's dive into a little bit of what it is, and first let me give you the reasons that this is so important. Right now, the US and other Western countries are facing extreme shortages of masks and respirators, which means that healthcare workers and people on the front lines of stopping the COVID-19 pandemic are at a huge risk because they're exposed to high viral loads and other routes of infection. And because of this, it's vitally important that we find a way to protect these healthcare workers and make the most of the stores that we still have. And the best way to do this is to build a mask that is reusable and that deactivate and kill any viruses that would come into contact with it. Up until now, this hasn't really seemed possible, but there's a promising study which came out in 2017 on using a layer of salt to essentially build a mask that can deactivate viruses. Let's look a little bit into the kinds of masks that are available to healthcare workers right now, especially the ones that we're facing shortages in, and why it's not a good idea to reuse masks without any kind of antiviral coating. On a gradient from least effective to most effective, there are about 6 kinds of masks and air filtration devices that can be used to prevent the spread of this virus and lower the chance of infection. The first one is a homemade mask, maybe a bandana or a t-shirt that you can tie around your face. The second would be a surgical mask. You see these a lot, and they're often used on patients who have this virus, as it allows the healthcare workers to move around and not worry about droplet infection from the patient sneezing or coughing. Then we also have a N95 or P100 respirator. These are highly effective filtration devices, and they're even used by surgeons when operating on patients with tuberculosis, which is another highly infectious viral disease. After that, we have half-face respirators. The problem with these is that they require filters, which can be expensive, and it's advisable not to reuse them. A step up from that, we have full-face respirators or maybe even gas masks with the CBRN filter. And then there is something which doesn't really qualify as a mask, but it is an air filtration device, and that's a PAPR, a powered air purifying respirator. PAPRs are quite expensive to maintain, the filter systems are expensive, and in addition, sometimes healthcare workers will wear goggles so that viral particles can't enter the conjunctiva because their eyes are mucous membrane, and they are also another route to infection. With these massive shortages, what's really being used on the front lines are surgical masks and respirators. Many healthcare workers are even having to reuse singular masks or singular N95 respirators, which is incredibly dangerous because research shows that after about 4 hours, an N95 respirator can lose its electrostatic coating, which means that it's no longer effective at filtering viral aerosols or droplets or other particles. And the same goes for surgical masks, which to start with aren't really that advisable when in high-risk situations. But there is some promising news here, and let's dive into the science about how a salt-coated mask can work and how it can deactivate viruses and potentially save lives on the front lines of this epidemic. The main discovery that this is predicated on is that the process of crystallization can pierce the structure of the virus, thereby deactivating and killing it. This was first observed by one of the authors of this study, Dr. Choi, when he found that sugar in lozenges for oral vaccine administration deactivated the virus in those lozenges. From an article on Science Daily, a major hurdle in the development of oral vaccines is that when liquid solutions dry, crystals form and destroy the virus used in these vaccines, rendering the treatment useless. In a nifty bit of engineering judo, Dr. Choi flipped the problem on its head and turned crystallization into a bug buster, using it as a tool to kill active viruses. We can take this discovery and apply that to masks and potentially even other forms of PPE. This is exciting. To read directly from the study, this is a part of the abstract. Aerosolized pathogens are a leading cause of respiratory infection and transmission. Currently used protective measures pose potential risk of primary or secondary infection and transmission. Here, we report the development of a universal, reusable virus deactivation system by functionalization of the main fibrous filtration unit of the surgical mask with sodium chloride salt. The salt coating on the fiber surface dissolves upon exposure to virus aerosols and recrystallizes during drying, thereby destroying the pathogens. This is massively exciting, particularly because salt, sodium chloride, is readily available and very inexpensive, and if we can find a way to easily augment the capacities of currently existing masks, like surgical masks and N95 masks, to make them more fit for reuse or extended periods of use, then we can save lives on the front lines and do so without spending massive amounts of money or running into further shortages. I'm not exactly following the methodology of this study, but all that's needed is that a droplet would come into contact with the salt. So as long as there is a dense enough layer of crystallized salt within a mask or on the outside of a mask, we would be able to retrofit homemade masks into virus-killing or virus deactivating ones. So to create a solution like this, what you need to do is warm up some water, put it in a beaker or any kind of pot, and start to slowly add salt into this water. I used kosher salt, but any kind of salt should work. As you dissolve this salt into your solution in small increments, you'll notice that some amount of the salt does not dissolve. What this means is that you've achieved a supersaturated saline solution. Let the mixture cool down. I let it cool down for about 30 minutes and then pulled out a generic spray bottle which I filled with this saline solution and tested out. As you can see, the spray solution worked, and I moved on to inadvertently spray my phone and the blue silicone mat, which achieved interesting crystallization results. Then I sprayed the homemade mask, the surgical mask, and the N95 respirator, and let these dry. I applied 5 coatings for the surgical mask and 4 coatings for the N95 mask, letting the masks dry fully in between. Then I imaged the crystallization. There were very good results on the polypropylene layer of the surgical mask. The N95 mask was a little less promising, and unfortunately, the homemade mask did not net any crystallization that I could catch on camera whatsoever, so I'll need to do a little bit more research on what we can do to make the solution more applicable to homemade masks or bandanas. I don't want to present this video as any kind of authoritative source, and I don't want you to take it that way either, but I would appreciate your help in brainstorming on what we could do to build more effective masks, and if you have any ideas, please, I would love to take up contact. You can reach me on Twitter at sebmelon. My email is sebastian@assemble.net, and I would love to hear from you. There are a few other resources that you can find on our blog at Assemble at assemble.li/COVID-19, and I'll be linking updates to the Salty Mask initiative there as well. I think another promising aspect of this is that if we could retrofit surgical masks or augment their capabilities effectively enough, we could put these on patients, and patients would not be able to expel virus particulates anymore because those viruses would be immediately deactivated by the salt layer within the surgical mask that they would be wearing. I'm also very interested in homemade masks and had the idea that a homemade mask could be built using a type of grid system or potentially 3D printed, such that the filter membrane actually is salt. In this case, we would need to find a way to build, little salt packets that could be inserted within respirators and be used as a sort of reusable filter material, I think that would be a magnificent application for this as well. I highly doubt that this process would damage the fibers of the N95 mask or of the surgical mask. That may be slightly different for soaking the masks, which is another strategy, particularly one that has been recommended by Jeffrey Stokes, who made the tinyurl.com/saltmask document. If you know of any problems with this solution, please let me know and I will immediately amend the video such that no one is misinformed. So I hope that was a deep enough look into the different strategies that can be used to build these salt-coated masks. I would like to thank the authors of this paper and thank them for publishing it in open access. And I would also like to say thank you to all the healthcare workers, everyone on the front lines battling this pandemic. And I would also like to make a plea to you, the viewer, to share this. If you're familiar with anyone who's an expert in these fields, or if you yourself are an expert in these fields, I would love to have you on. And to the authors of the study, I would love to have an interview with you and really get an idea of what's going on here. I think that's all. If you share this video, please share it using the salty masks hashtag. The hope is that we can build some sort of viral movement here and hopefully save lives on the front lines. Be safe, stay healthy. Bye.